Hi! If you can hear your tumble dryer motor but the tub isn't going round, then there's a fair chance that your belt is either broken or come off. When it comes to refitting the belt onto the drum, there are two options. One is to remove the front of the machine and slide it over the drum that way, and the other is to undo the rear bearing and fit it that way. Because there are two options, we've made two videos, one for each option. In this video I'll be replacing the drive belt on a Hotpoint CTD condensing tumble dryer using option 2 by undoing the rear bearing. The tools I needed to accomplish this task were a Phillips screwdriver in whichever form you choose, manual or powered, a large flat bladed screwdriver, an 8mm socket and wrench, a pair of engineer's pliers, a pair of long nose pliers, they're optional, and a multimeter or mega. First take the top off by undoing the two screws on the back and then slide it to the rear. It may be tight, but it will come off. Undo the two screws holding the bearing cover on and place it somewhere within reach, because it will be useful to put all the screws in as you remove them. Next, straighten one end of the retaining pin so it can be pulled out of the shaft. It will probably need a bit of persuading to come out, because these rarely come out easily. Remove the collar and put it in the container with the screws. The side panels are held on by 4 screws on the back edges and one on the top at the front. When these have been taken out, you can ease the panel backwards and lift it up and away from the base. Do this with both sides. The next part to undo is the end of the reservoir ducting. So remove the feed pipe and the overflow pipe. Then twist the inlet nozzle anti-clockwise so it faces away from the machine and lift it out. And finally, undo the screws either side of the unit. Now move to the other side of the cabinet and remove the two screws holding the support bar on. The rear panel is now flexible enough to allow it to be eased out at the top sufficiently to release the drum shaft from the rear bearing, which is all you need to get the belt between the two and over the drum. Once the belt's over the drum, you can refit the drum shaft into the bearing. Replace the collar and pin. Bend the bottom end of it in the opposite direction to the top end. This way it won't twist as the drum rotates and it won't fall out. Screw the support bar onto the rear panel to stabilise the right hand side of the cabinet, and then move to the other side and refit the reservoir ducting screws to stabilise that side. Fit the inlet connector and replace the water pipe. Then connect up the overflow pipe. You can now replace the side panel, but be careful that the front screw goes back in the original hole it came out of, or it won't fit properly. To fit the belt onto the pulley, you first need to release the wires on top of the fan housing. Then use a flat bladed screwdriver and lever one of the side clasps out. This will free the housing for you to lift it up and out of the way. The impeller is attached to the motor shaft by a spring clasp, which will need compressing to free it. Once it's off, the impeller can be levered away from the shaft. Give the jockey wheel a few turns just to make sure it's not seized up. Undo the bolt furthest from you and remove it. Then loosen the other bolt about 2 turns, just enough so you can pivot the pulley assembly downwards. There is a small bracket on the inside of the pulley assembly which hooks onto the motor casing, so it will need a bit of wiggling to free it. Hold the belt over the motor shaft and hold it tight against it. Feed the belt up to the plastic housing and ease it towards the motor while turning the shaft with your other hand. This will feed the belt through the small gap and onto the drive section of the shaft. With the jockey pulley lowered, the belt can be eased over the wheel, and with the aid of a screwdriver the pulley assembly can be levered up to tighten it. Make sure the assembly is pushed tight against the motor when it is levered up, for the bracket on the rear of the pulley assembly to locate in the motor housing, or you won't get the bolt to fit. It would be very useful to have an 8mm socket and wrench to fit the bolts, although a box spanner would do just as well. Once you have fitted and tightened the pulley assembly, turn the drum slowly a few times just to line up the belt onto the existing track mark on the drum. In this way you know it won't come off as soon as you start the machine up. Refit the impeller, but be careful not to push it onto the motor shaft too far or it will rub against the housing. Try to have the end of the shaft just in line with the internal sleeve on the impeller, the bit that the spring clamp goes onto. And if you need to tap the impeller onto the shaft, this is the part you want to hit, not the blade section, as this will bend and make it uneven when turning, causing the motor to vibrate as it spins. It can be a bit awkward getting the spring clasp to fit over the impeller sleeve, so if you use a screwdriver to ease it on, this helps. Once that's on, you can refit the other part of the housing and clip it in place. Don't forget to resight the cables and any other connections you may have disturbed. The side panel can now be replaced and refitted with the 4 screws down the back and the 1 screw on top. Don't forget to refit the bearing cover. Replace the top. They tend to go back a lot easier than they come off, and finally screw it down. But before you switch it on, just do an earth continuity test to make sure the earth's okay. Turn the meter to the 200 scale and place one probe on the earth terminal of the plug and the other on any exposed part of the cabinet. You should get a reading, but if there is no reading, then you have no earth, so you've got to re-examine the appliance. On behalf of Selfix UK, we'd like to thank you for watching this video and hope you found it useful. Goodbye.